very nice to be with you again today for the next series of Connected Compliance Dialogues. And today I have great pleasure in chatting to Mary Dontzin, who is the Head of Business Integrity at Nokia Corporation. Mary, hello, and how are you?
Hi, Joanna. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Great. Well, it's fantastic that you've made yourself available to chat to me today. And actually, the first thing I wanted to chat to you about was the fact that this is a relatively new role for you. And what a time to start a new job. So how has it been?
Indeed, it's a new role in a new way of working, and it's been great. It's been a time of real change and transition for me. And I think one of the more interesting things that I've observed is to understand just how resilient and flexible the people with whom I'm working can be, and quite frankly, how resilient and flexible I can be. But you realize in a time like this, how much you can adapt and you can actually find the positives in any situation. And then starting a new job under these circumstances, probably not something I would have chosen, but also there were some hidden benefits and some ways that perhaps you get to interact with team members that I might not have if the situation didn't exist.
Tell me about the positives that you've experienced being in a new role and how you've managed to interact with your team and establish yourself.
Yeah, so you know, the obvious challenge when you're starting a new role and you're in lockdown is that you feel you're not going to be able to reach people as effectively. Had I started this role during a different time, frankly, I would have been on an airplane traveling around the world to sit with team members, because I have team members located all over the world, and I'd want to meet with them face to face, hear about the various matters they're working on, hear about what's going well from their perspective, what's challenging, things they'd like to see change, things they'd want to continue. And my fear coming into this was, how am I going to have that connection with people? What I found is you find a way. We're all obviously relying on technology a lot more. There's a lot more calls, WebEx, Zoom meetings, phone calls, but it's given, in some respects, the lockdown and being at home has given me an opening, and my team members an opening, perhaps to connect a bit more personally. It's not only is it acceptable, it's really something I want to do as a team leader, is to ask people, how are you doing? Where are you working from? What is the connection? Are you able to get, your work done? What do you need? How are you feeling? These are questions we might not pursue as much if we were just meeting in an office and everything was standard. In some ways, there's a little bit more of a personal connection and an opening to talk about, more, personal matters.
What have you found the most challenging as the head of business integrity in terms of doing your job?
It's a great question. So our team is responsible for addressing any concern that gets raised globally within our company. And I would say there have been challenges posed by working in this COVID environment, and they probably fall into two buckets. I'd say one is more operational and practical, and the other is maybe sort of more fundamental to our core mission of driving what we call the speak up culture. So on sort of the practical operational side, it's very hard to conduct investigations, or I should say it's harder, it's more difficult and more challenging to conduct investigations remotely. And we have, I think, been very fortunate in that we've been able to persevere and move forward with virtually all of our investigations. But for sure, there are challenges. We have situations where it certainly would be better to be face to face, perhaps to better assess credibility. Or perhaps we want to be in the same room with a witness and a translator, and that would help us, navigate language differences better. Or it might be that there's some remote site where we really want to go to obtain some kind of physical evidence, documents that are not easily available, virtually. So there are those challenges. For the most part, we have found a way to work around it, done a lot of interviews virtually, and we can move forward. But there's no question it's more challenging. And then there are all of the issues that, you hear a lot of practitioners talking about when you're conducting interviews, virtually. It's more difficult to ensure confidentiality, or to ensure that someone is not being coached, or any of those practical considerations, and are you ensuring privilege, etc. More challenging, more thought has to go into the logistics, but we have found, fortunately, that we can move forward despite these challenges. I think sort of the broader concern that we've seen is less that people may feel less motivated, less inclined, or less able to speak up and report concerns, because a lot of, at Nokia, we very much want to drive a speak up culture where employees feel, very empowered and free to raise their hand if they have a concern. And a lot of that is facilitated by being in an office.
I mean, look, those comments totally resonate with my experience and what I've been told by other clients of their challenges as well. And so, first of all, on the investigation side, have you identified any processes or ways of working which have made the challenges less great, which have enabled your teams to overcome some of those challenges you mentioned?
I think maybe not specific process changes as much as really rallying the team. And honestly, I give them all the credit. It's a great team. They're very cohesive. They're very supportive of one another, and saying, we can do this, we can be flexible, we can keep going, we can find a way, and not shying away from, frankly, a lot of technology. And we're scheduling meetings virtually and jumping on these WebExes and these Zoom calls. And, if we need to collect data remotely, that's what we're doing. And look, we're doing all those things before. We're just doing more of it now. And some of it is just sort of driving that team spirit to keep going. We can do this. And sort of the proof is in the pudding. As we do it, we're seeing it's happening. Like, we can get these cases resolved, these concerns resolved. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I can see that. And then in relation to the point you made about speak up culture, I mean, I think that's one of the most difficult challenges, to drive a culture of compliance when everyone is fragmented and remote and not seeing physically and not interacting with their colleagues. Have you noticed a drop off in numbers on your speak up lines, for example?
Yeah, I think there has been some softening in terms of absolute numbers of concerns raised. We're fortunate in that absolutely people still are speaking up. We are able, I think, to really drive that speak up culture because we work so closely with the business, and the business leaders continue to send out the right messages in that regard. And Nokia is pretty good at messaging, the importance of ethics and integrity. But what might be missing now is that opportunity to walk down the hall and talk it over with someone like an ombuds or a legal colleague, and talk it out and say, yeah, you know what, I do need to raise this. Maybe that's a little less available during these times, and it's bound to have an impact.
And I'm really interested in what you said about your reliance on the business, because one of the fundamental tenets of connected compliance that we've advocated for a very long time is the importance of the compliance function connecting with the business and ensuring that the business is an extension of what the ethics team is doing. And I think, what you said about the business leaders still pushing the messages around ethics and integrity and conduct and the importance of your values is really key. And I wondered whether you'd share with me how you've managed to establish that alliance with the business leaders.
That's good. I agree with you. First, I have to say it's very critical to have that relationship with the business and to have the business leaders own the messaging, because their people are going to respond most deeply, I would say, or it's going to resonate most coming from their business leaders, as opposed to me, sitting in legal and compliance and separate from their function. That's just sort of the reality. And I think how we've done it really is there is a very deep and experienced compliance team spread out across the world, and they work very hard at engaging regularly with their business counterparts. I think it's all about working very closely with the business, letting them know what we're working on, what we're concerned about, and making sure we're getting their feedback and their intake and putting it all together.
And have you discovered or realized that you have different risks now to manage than before? Are there new things on your desk that wouldn't have featured in the day of the business integrity team before COVID that you're now realizing are new risks that you guys need to deal with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, look, first and foremost, there's obviously that the health and safety of our employees and ensuring that, and there certainly are concerns, questions, needs for guidance on those, health and safety topics in the age of COVID coming up. That's one new bucket. I think, there's as I already mentioned, the risk of ensuring that that people are still speaking up and raising concerns, even if they're not physically in the office.
And one thing I wanted to follow up on, actually, that you mentioned earlier about technology and embracing technology perhaps more than you previously did. Do you think that the pandemic has escalated the deployment of tech as part of an effective compliance program?
I think that we were very focused on utilizing technology properly, and it's something we were looking at pre-COVID, particularly in the area of leveraging, say, AI and predictive modeling, and how more can we use this. And then we see the most recent DOJ guidance that talks about, learning from whether it's the outside enforcement environment or any compliance misses you have internally. And we've been thinking a lot about, do we have the best technology for that? Can we do more with that? So I think we were already there in terms of this is very important, but you're right. COVID is probably an extra little push of, you see how important this is, the technology, and how much we rely on it, how we need it to be seamless. So it's certainly bolstered where we were already heading, I suppose.
It's been absolutely fantastic to catch up with you. Thank you so much for giving your time and your insights about business integrity in Nokia during COVID times.
Terrific. Same from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.